It's very important to understand that while the teachings are important so that you can develop a foundation of understanding that will motivate you to practice, and a foundation of understanding that helps you to understand the nature of the mind, because that's what you're dealing with when you practice meditation, the concepts have to be understood to be limited, and the experience of meditation is a non-conceptual experience. So the concepts have a certain use, but the concepts have to be let go of when you're in the practice of meditation, because they have no use there. Because in the practice of meditation, we're moving attention away from the thinking activity, so the concepts aren't available. You have to think to do the concepts. Concepts aren't available. So there's something different that happens when you're practicing meditation other than thinking. But this is an interesting facet of this, you know, the idea that you can sit there and a simple thing like holding your hands in this particular form and maintaining a straight back and maintaining your head looking forward like this, that's not that hard. But once you get into the practice of meditation, right, it's very easy to lose your way. It's very easy to lose your awareness of what's happening in the immediate reality, right? Because once you go into thinking, you're not there. You're thinking about being there, but you're not there. And so one of the things about this, that, there are two primary sects in the Buddhist tradition in terms of meditation. And one's called the Rinzai sect and the other's called the Soto sect. And they're not that much different. There are some basic differences. One difference is in the Soto sect, you meditate with your eyes open. In the Rinzai sect, you meditate with your eyes closed. You can try both things. I do both things back and forth, to just see which way you prefer, right? In the Soto sect, they say you should have your eyes open because all the rest of your senses are open, right? So don't just close one sense and all the rest of the senses are open. And the other thing that they say is we want to practice in the world, right? Because that's where you live in the world. The Rinzai sect says that it's more important to practice on the technique itself and to be able to focus on that without having any visual disturbance to it. The thing that I think is a bigger difference between the Rinzai and the Soto sect is the Rinzai sect says when you practice meditation, you're practicing in order to experience enlightenment. Right? You're practicing in order to experience enlightenment. Enlightenment is defined by the experience of making direct contact with your true nature, the experience of having direct contact with the reality of what you are, which is awareness itself, right? Making direct contact with that, right? And that's called being enlightened. That's called waking up. When you make direct contact with that, you experience what it's like to be yourself. Until that time, you're only experiencing concepts about yourself, or thoughts about yourself, and so forth. So in the Soto sect, they say that you're not meditating in order to become enlightened. Meditation is being enlightened. And when I first heard that, I wasn't sure I understood how that could be so, because I was training in the Rinzai sect. My teacher is a Rinzai teacher. Right? But I got interested in it, and I've been reading a teacher from the Soto sect, and I read some of the teaching there, and it got a little clearer to me. And the reason it got clear to me is because I saw that when you're practicing meditation, when you move your attention from the thought activity to becoming aware of the body breathing, okay, what is no longer there when you're experiencing the experience of the body breathing, what is no longer there is the personality. Because the personality cannot exist without thought. The personality is a thought activity. If I ask you who you are, you tell me what you think. It's a thought activity, right? And most human beings live their life in the thought activity. They wake up in the morning and they start thinking about everything, and they keep thinking until they go to sleep at night, and then they can't stop thinking to get to sleep, right? But when your attention is away from that and you're aware of the body breathing, you are being what's real. The awareness is real. The personality isn't real. The personality is only a conceptual understanding. It's an image, a self-concept, right? but it's not real. And even though it's not real, most people literally believe that that's what they are. Okay, this is the source of suffering, because if you believe that's what you are, it means that you are the thinker of the thoughts. And you don't question your own thoughts. You believe your thoughts. Automatically you believe your thoughts, right? Because they come from you and you trust yourself. You believe your thoughts, right? And you think your thoughts are an expression of the information that's coming through your senses, right? But that's not true. They're not your thoughts are not an expression of the information coming in through your senses. The information comes in through your senses, gets processed by your brain, and then produces thoughts. So you're seeing a product which is an interpretation of what came through the senses based on your past experience. And if you live your life in relationship to this thought activity, you are not awake. You are not experiencing life. You're experiencing a thought process about life. And most people live their entire life in that thought process. And if you depend on that thought process, one of the things that the thought process does is it compares everything. Because according to that thought process, you are a physical body and you are separate from the world, and you are separate from other people, right? And that thought process is comparing everything all the time because it's on the lookout for what's going to threaten you, what's going to happen to you, okay? And so it's comparing things all the time, and what it does is it keeps scanning. It uses the eyes, right, and the ears to keep scanning all the time. This is happening all the time in nanoseconds, right? And it's scanning in order to pick up any information that might appear to be a threat, right? And anything that appears to be a threat, all it has to do to appear to be a threat is not be the same as what you think. That's all it has to do. If something happens that's inconsistent with what you think, you right away, something's wrong here, right? And so when that happens, when something happens that's not consistent with what you think, you go into an upset state. Right? You go into a state of preparing for fight or flight, and your nervous system goes out of balance, right? And your nervous system, one of the things the teachers say is that our autonomic nervous system for most human beings is out of balance all the time, right? Why? Because one of the things that happens in the mental process is there's consistently things happening that aren't a match for what you think. Isn't that true? Consistently things are happening that aren't a match for what you think. And whenever that happens, the system goes into danger, goes into fight or flight. It may not even be detectable to you because it's so consistent, but if you really look and pay attention to it, you can see that you are always in a state of concern. There's always a concern, right? You may not even be sure what you're concerned about, like generalized anxiety, right? That's a condition that people go to therapy for, generalized anxiety. Well, what are you anxious about? I don't know, right? It's the system. It's the system. The autonomic system is out of balance. Therefore, the body's in a constant state of tension, right? Therefore, the body's in a constant state of preparation to fight or flight, right? All you have to do is when you're in your car leaving here, right, take notice of how much it takes for you to get pissed off in traffic. That's how close you are to fight or flight all the time, right? As soon as something happens that's not supposed to be happening, right, you go right into fight or flight, right? And then the energy of the emotion comes up, right? And then your mouth starts to work, right? That son of a bitch, right? That's going on all the time. There's no rest from that. That's why people can't sleep. That's why people's blood pressure is up. That's why people are eating food to try and feel satisfied. That's why people are doing everything they can to avoid their own experience. People are doing everything they can to avoid their own experience. Because the process that goes on in the mind, the thinking activity, the conversation that produces about the experience is disturbing a lot of the time. So, this business that the Soto tradition says is when you're practicing meditation, you're actually experiencing being enlightened. I think I understand what they're talking about. Because if you move your attention away from the thought activity, if enlightenment means that you're having a direct experience of your true nature, which means you're not having an experience of being a personality, right? Well, in meditation, when your attention is away from the thought activity and you're aware of the body breathing, you are experiencing experience. Actually, it's not that you are experiencing experience because there is no you. If you move attention away from the thinking and you're being aware of the body breathing, There is no one that's happening to. There is no one that's doing that. The awareness is not a personality. The awareness is an experience, right? And there's nobody experiencing that experience, right? This is what the teachings say in a nutshell, right? If you come to experiencing reality as it is, which is that the personality doesn't actually exist, there's nobody experiencing that experience, right? Then all that was going on when you thought you were a personality comes to an end. All the suffering stops because you're not comparing anything to anything anymore. You're just being aware of the way things are. It's not being compared anymore to anything. You're just being aware of the way things are. It's a whole different experience. And so that's what I get that they mean in Soto Zen, that when you're experiencing moving your attention away from the thought activity, when it's away from the thought activity, there is no person. There is no body thinking because there is no thinking. Your attention is away from that, okay? And so what happens is you literally start to experience the actual experience of being alive. You actually start to experience the actual experience of being alive. Not the thought about it, not the story about it, but the actual in the moment experience of being alive. And not only are you experiencing the experience of being alive, but since there's no one experiencing that experience, you are the experience. You are the experience, right? You are the experience. What is it that's the experience? The awareness itself is the experience, and the awareness itself is life itself. The experience of the experience, with nobody having the experience, is life itself, right? That's why they say when you wake up, you see things as they are, because you are life witnessing life. You are the self witnessing the self. The self and life are the same thing. There is no difference between the self and life. The experience you're having and what you're experiencing is the same thing. But there's no you there. This is the teaching. You know, the teaching in the Heart Sutra, the very beginning of the Heart Sutra, which is considered one of the most important teachings in the Buddhist tradition. In the very beginning of the Heart Sutra, it says, upon experiencing the truth of no self, upon experiencing the truth of no self, and then it goes on to say, emptiness is form and form is emptiness. Because when you experience no self, the form that's there and the awareness of the form are the same thing. Does that register? Does anybody get that? When you're aware, when you are being what you actually are, you are the experience of life, and the experience of life appears as form, right? And the form and the awareness of the form are the same thing. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, right? This is what it's like to wake up and experience things as they are. And when you experience things as they are, the most valuable aspect of the experience is the freedom from suffering that was happening when you thought you were something else. So that's what's available through the practice of meditation. And as I often say as a psychologist, right, that if you study the teachings and you practice the practices consistently, you will be in the most powerful psychotherapeutic process you can possibly be in. Nothing can be more psychotherapeutic than waking up to your true nature. Because if you wake up to your true nature, what becomes available to you is a natural experience of well-being, right? There's happiness, there's fulfillment, there is peace, there is contentment, there's satisfaction. Not for anybody, that's just the experience, and the experience and the experiencer are the same thing. And that's why they say in Advaita Vedanta, you know, Sat Chit Ananda. You know, they say Sat Chit Ananda is the experience of the truth. Sat is existence, Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is happiness. So when you're being what you are, you're happy. Right? And what you are exists, it's real. Right? It's not a thought process. Now, one of the ways that they talk about this in the teachings is they say when you wake up, it's they don't know mind. Don't know mind. Or and then they say beginner's mind. In other words, what they're saying is you can see everything freshly as it is, not as you interpreted it. You can see it as it actually is prior to the interpretation of it. Right? And when you're awake, you can see as it is prior to the interpretation of it, but you can also be aware of the interpretation of it, right? but you're no longer identifying yourself with that. It can be useful, concepts can be useful, but you don't take them to be the truth. A map is not the territory, right? This is something that you have to come to experience directly in order to be free from. You can understand it conceptually if you study the teachings, but that won't free you from the trouble that you're in if you identify with the thought process all the time and you think you're the physical body. When you're having the experience of the experience, when you move your attention away from the thought activity and you are the experience, you are life happening, right? There's no doubt about the fact that you're not the personality, and there's no doubt about the fact that you're not a physical body. No doubt about it. You can look and see. You can look and see. You can't be something you can see. You know, if you have any questions about whether or not you're the physical body, all you have to do is take some time and contemplate that one statement. You can't be something you can see. If you can see it, there has to be a distance between you and what you're looking at. And you can see the body, right? So you have one, but you are not what it is. And if you begin to experience the truth of that, right, then you're free from all the suffering you would experience if you think you're the body. If you think you're the body, you're going to suffer because it's going to go through some unpleasant changes, isn't it? It's going to get sick and die, right? So you don't want to make that mistake, but you can't get out of making that mistake unless you actually have an experience of the truth. That's one of the things that the tradition argues, is it says that any philosophy, any religion, right, that's based solely on conceptual understanding, right, has no power. Has no power. And I found that out myself, right, because as I have shared here before, when I was a young man, I had studied these things. I was really interested in Buddhism, and I read Alan Watts's books, and I listened to a lot of Zen teachers, and I studied Kundalini Yoga, and I did retreats, I did a lot of stuff. And the thing about all that was that it left me very frustrated because I just couldn't figure out for the life of me, how is it that I can understand all this shit and I'm still crazy? How is it that I can understand all this stuff and I still act like an idiot in my relationships? You know what I mean? I couldn't get a marriage to work. Couldn't get the relationship with my parents to work, right? I could barely get along with animals, right? So that was a very frustrating experience until eventually it dawned on me that no matter what you know as a concept, it won't change your behavior because your behavior is locked in a program that's in your brain that's running your thoughts and running your behavior. It's a mechanical process that's going on. And just because you have a conceptual understanding about the truth, it doesn't change the fact that your brain will still be running the show. You still have an unenlightened brain. You still have a brain that is a collection of everything that ever happened to you from the time you were born, and its operating procedure has to do with survival, not happiness. Your brain is all about what will threaten you and hurt you or kill you. There's nothing wrong with that, but the problem is that the program's a dumb program in the sense that it thinks the personality is as real as the physical body is. So that anything that threatens the personality, you behave as if it's threatening your physical body. Right? Anything that threatens your personality can be as little as somebody looking at you too long. That's all it takes for the shit to go off as far as your personality is concerned. And if your personality gets invalidated by somebody behaving around you that gets interpreted by you as that means that they don't care about me, they don't love me, all they care about is themselves. This is how relationships go in the toilet. It doesn't matter how close you are to people. The closer you are to people, the crazier you are with them. Because the closer you are with people, the more vulnerable you are as a personality, emotionally and psychologically. So when you start to study these things, if you really, really, really understand these concepts and you really make yourself available to these teachings and practices, it will become clear to you that you must practice meditation. You must allow yourself to experience the truth. There is nothing you can ever study that's going to save your ass. The only thing that's going to save your ass is to get yourself awake, to get yourself experiencing what's actually happening, and then you can respond to it instead of react to it. A reaction is produced by thought, right? A reaction is produced by thought. How it produces a reaction, it uses your past experience and takes whatever's happening and this happens in nanoseconds in your brain. Takes whatever's happening, compares it to whatever in your past is close enough to that, and has you behave the same way now as you did then. And the system, the way the system is organized, if you're still alive, whatever you did then must have worked. So it just has you repeat that. Now what you repeat may have nothing to do with what's actually happening, right? And so you'll behave like that and make a fool of yourself, right? You'll survive, but it wasn't because of what you did, but the brain is a machine. The brain is not conscious. It can't see what's actually happening, right? So when you wake up and you start to experience being awake, you can start to actually see what's happening. If you actually see what's happening, you can respond to it instead of depend on your reaction to what's happening. Reactions are inappropriate. Reactions are unrealistic. Reactions create problems. Right? So, any questions? The reason I teach this class is because I'm passionate about meditation. I'm passionate about meditation because there's nothing I know that has made more of a profound difference in my life. And I know that will be true for anybody who makes a commitment to this practice. But you have to understand one thing. The class is intended to motivate you and stimulate you, right, and inspire you to begin to establish a meditation practice, which means you do it every single day without fail, like brushing your teeth. That's the only way this will work, right? Because you're practicing all the time, and unless you practice something other than thinking, your life will continue to be a thinking activity. Right? Because human beings are a one-trick pony. That's the only thing they know how to do is think. Right? So meditation offers you the opportunity to discover a whole new realm of existence called experience. A direct experience of what's happening, and when you have that direct experience of what's happening, and you practice it consistently, so you start to experience the freedom from the identity that you thought you were, right? Then you experience a state of well-being, because if you're not the neurotic personality that you thought you were, and you're just the awareness of what's happening, the awareness is a formless experience that is always totally content, satisfied, and happy because it has no expectations about anything. It's just here in life to experience being alive. That's all it's doing. And that's what everybody wants more than anything else. The whole world, all 8 billion people are in the same process of trying to find happiness, satisfaction, peace, right? That's what they're doing. They think money is the answer to that. Well, look at the situation that exists because of that, right? It turns life into a living hell, right? Anything that you think is necessary for you to get from the environment in order for you to be happy will cause suffering and cause chaos and cause conflict. Because there's only so much resources to go around, right? So now we right away have to start figuring, how am I going to get enough for me? I don't care about these other people. Right? There are people right now in the world that don't have enough food to live for another day, right? But we're just going to watch CNN and see who's going to win the presidential debate. We're just going to stay crazy. We're not going to pay attention to the truth.